Finland has officially joined NATO, and 4 astronauts have been chosen for the first moon landing in 50 years. The 299 News starts now.
Welcome to the 299 News. I'm Aiden.
And I'm Matt.
And I'm Cole. And boys, I have breaking news. On the day of recording this, tomorrow, April 4th, 2023, Finland will be officially joining the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, a defense alliance mostly led by the United States and the Western powers against Russia. And Finland had an election this week, and then they also have a new prime minister who is still in support of the West. What are your thoughts on just Finland joining NATO in general?
Cool.
Matt, do you have any? Matt, what do you think of it?
I think of it as a huge historical event, but pretty memorable because it shows that, or Finland, because I know Finland was threatened by Russia to prevent them from joining NATO. So it's kind of shows that Russian threats don't really have a lot of effect to other countries, and that NATO is making progress regardless of Russian hostility.
So Finland, during the Cold War, declared neutrality between both the Soviets and the Americans, but of course we know they had their favorites. And they even fought a war against Russia at the beginning of World War II, the Great Winter War, where the Soviets invaded Finland. And they went in. Stop me when this sounds familiar. They went into a country that they were afraid was going to join their enemies, and decided that they were going to invade them after months of negotiation between the two that didn't go anywhere. They entered in thinking that they were easily going to win within a few weeks, and then didn't win after a stalemate in the winter. Sound familiar to anybody?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now Russia did end up winning that war. They got a couple, they didn't get a lot of land out of it though, but it pushed Finland's borders to where they are today. And Finland joining NATO now effectively gives NATO an 800-plus mile border with Russia, including near the Kola Peninsula, where there's many missile silos located, owned by Russia, and gives NATO an even tighter control over the Baltic Sea, the sea that is in between Sweden, Finland, and Germany. And which helps us prevent a surprise submarine invasion or just another naval invasion of Germany or anywhere else. So, but Hungary and Turkey had held out on both Sweden and Finland, but Finland decided to break away from Sweden in that deal and go on their own, where Hungary and Turkey both quickly ratified Finland to join NATO, which they will be doing tomorrow. And it also puts us a lot closer to St. Petersburg, which of course is a pretty big city. Now, I've heard, yeah, well, go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I wanted to ask, do you know the death toll during the war between Finland and Russia? I asked that because...
No, I can look it up, though.
Okay. And I asked that because I'm interested in knowing kind of the Russian performance in that war, and if it relates, coupled with their intentions, does it relate to the war in Ukraine? Meaning that Russia's incompetence on the battle leads to a lot of lots of Russian deaths. Because I know
Finland lost 26,000 soldiers. So Finland lost 26,000. Russia lost somewhere between 126,000 to 170,000.
Yeah. Oh,
so about 150,000 more.
And
it was a war that only lasted 3 months.
So that adds credibility to my argument. So because I know recently, I think the death toll for the Russians was like 130,000, while the Ukrainians was like 40,000. And yes, the war has been dragged on for like a year, but just the high number, like how Russian deaths like completely just skyrocket, but compared to like the Ukrainians, it shows that the Russians on the battlefield in a direct conflict with another country just shows that they just they're, even though they're large, they can't facilitate and maneuver their troops effectively. And I think a lot of that has to do with the logistics, which has been talked about in the past with Russia.
Right. Yeah, it's the Russian army and military isn't modernized. I think it's still mostly built based off of the Soviet military, but the only thing they have that's modernized is nuclear weapons. So,
and
which they've now moved to Belarus. Belarus now has nuclear weapons from Russia.
Mm-hmm. I heard that Russia is sending nuclear missiles on the border with Belarus, and about that technology and how Russia is behind in weapon technology. Ukraine is now or I think about a month ago, on the anniversary of the beginning of the war. I think NATO or allies of Ukraine have been sending tanks, particularly Germany. Well, there was conflict in Germany. The Leopards to Ukraine, replacing the old Soviet tank.
Right.
It's be able to be more effective, more able to maneuver, and just has better armor too. But it will require more training, which will take time. But it's going to replace that old Soviet tank, which has kept the Ukrainians from creating a massive advance or counterattack.
Mm-hmm.
And these tanks will allow them to do that. And hope maybe my idea is since Russia can't coordinate attacks effectively, they're not cohesive. Then Ukrainians, if they do a massive attack, then maybe they can push the Russians, back using those tanks
back to the border at least.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I agree. I read an article this week. I can't tell you who it's by. I can't remember, unfortunately. But in order for Ukraine to officially have won the war and it to be over, Ukraine has to push Russia back to the original land, the original borders, and they have to retake Crimea. Which I think has been loosely forgotten by many people who pay attention to the war.
Yeah.
So Crimea would be really hard for Ukraine to take back, especially since it's kind of separated off from mainland Ukraine.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I looked on a map, and a lot of the contested areas is in the Donbass region.
Right, the Luhansk and Donbass.
Yeah. And
we talked about it last week on our podcast. Check it out.
Yeah, and then in
the description below.
And then Crimea and northern Crimea, there's really not much going on down there. It's mostly just in the east. But do you remember when Russia had a referendum in east, a different Luhansk, Donetsk, and different regions?
Yeah, it was in September last year.
September, yeah, and
yeah, it was 95%, and all of the regions said yes. But yet, whenever Ukraine goes into the land to take it back, they're celebrating Ukraine. They're praising them. The people are thankful that the Ukrainians have liberated them.
Yeah, and I remember I was watching a kind of a summary, like an hour-long summary of the war in Ukraine.
Yeah,
and they talk about how the Russians, Putin, made this referendum for those regions, and a lot of almost everyone Ukrainians were against the being annexed by Russia, but they were annexed anyway.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me either.
So, many people are wondering, because we talked about, because I mentioned the new Finnish prime minister, if there was going to be an attempt by Russia to rig the election, possibly. But it wouldn't have made sense for Russia to try, because if a pro-Russianist had won, then the whole everybody in NATO would be questioning it. There would have been so much doubt, unassurance. Nobody would believe it.
If it was a fair election?
Yeah, then nobody would believe. The United States wouldn't believe it's a fair election. How does Finland go from wanting to join NATO to just instantly not wanting to join anymore? So.
Yeah. And I think that that Russia is already on everyone's bad side, and why would they want to make it worse for themselves? And they're just, at this point, I just don't see them coming back with this if Putin stays in power.
So, that's alright. That's alright. Supposedly, we don't have much time left with him because he might die due to cancer. So, yeah.
Let's hope that. This might sound terrible, but I hope that happens. So, I know it's.
Zelensky said in an interview today he hopes that Putin is locked in a basement with only a bucket, in a dark basement with only a bucket. It's a good comment. That kind of has to connect with us. So Matt, you had you wanted to talk about something else that happened in Russia this week.
Yeah. So this is related to the conflict in between Russia and Ukraine. A pro-Russian blogger was killed in St. Petersburg during a bombing at a cafe. His name was Maxim Fomin, but his pen name was Vladlen Tatarsky. He had 560,000 followers on his Telegram messaging app, and he would frequently post reports about the front lines during the conflict. So authorities aren't sure who orchestrated the bombings. Apparently, what happened was during one of Tatarsky's shows at this cafe, he was given a busk that contained a bomb, which blew up, killing him and others. And there is no one said if others were killed, but just I'm going to assume that there was because I would doubt there's just one person that was killed. But anyway, the National Anti-Terrorist Committee in Russia said that Ukraine was at fault, but Ukrainian authorities have not directly responded to Russia's accusations. But they believe that it was a result of Russian turmoil as a result of the conflict in Ukraine. The person who gave the bust to Fomin was Dara Trapova. She was arrested recently, and it was believed that the event was an act of terrorism. When she was arrested and interrogated, she admitted that she gave the bust to Fomin, but she would not explain furthermore. She said that she would explain why she did it or who gave her the bust at a later time. Let's see. So here's I'll read a quote from the Portland Press Herald, which is where I obtained all this information. So Trapova was an active supporter of imprisoned Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny.
Navalny, I know who that is.
Yeah. So in backstory, do you want to explain who that is, Cole?
So Navalny was a political opposition leader in Russia, specifically going out and speaking against Putin, and he's constantly been running away so that he doesn't get attacked, killed, or anything. But on a flight from Tomsk to Moscow, he was poisoned by Russia, and he was later hospitalized as the plane was put down after an emergency, which was him. And he so yep, and he was later imprisoned for basically speaking out against Putin, which you can't do. So yeah.
In addition to speaking out against him, he also found a lot of dirt on Putin and his regime.
Solid.
Showing a lot of like financial fraud where money being supposed to be sent to like public transportation system or whatever is actually being sent somewhere else that does not benefit the public except himself.
You know what we call that?
What?
A gamer move.
And, so both these events sorry. Not both of these. So something similar that happened to this about in August was when Dara Dugina which was a nationalist TV commentator, was killed in a bombing, which was where a bomb was attached to her SUV and exploded, killing her. There was accusations that Ukraine was involved, but they have denied involvement. Russia is using both the bombings of Fomin and Dugina as a justification for their special military operation. I say that in quotes. But so it's not entirely sure who orchestrated this attack and who did it. There are conspiracies that Ukraine was involved. There, like you said, or that Russia or Russian authorities did it to lengthen Navalny's prison term. Most likely they'll figure out the details to it soon once make more investigations. But yeah, right now it's kind of a mystery. I'm not entirely sure who did it.
Spooky.
So yeah, I'll move on. Let's move on from Ukraine. Unless anybody else wants to add something.
I'm good.
All right, so let's move on from Ukraine to just a short little segment on the first moon landing in 50 years, which I will just say like a little snippet from the article that I read from the Associated Press. What are you doing?
Celebrating?
All right, let's go. The 4 astronauts, recently, 4 astronauts have been chosen to take a space shuttle next year to go around the moon. I will just read a short little segment that I took from the article that I read. The 4 astronauts will be the first to fly NASA's Orion capsule, launching atop a Space Launch System rocket from Kennedy Space Center no earlier than late 2024. They will not land or even go into lunar orbit, but rather fly around the moon and head straight back to Earth. A prelude to a lunar landing by 2 others a year later. So it's pretty exciting. Because it's too bad that they're not actually
4
landing.
astronauts chosen.
Hmm?
So who were the 4 astronauts chosen? Does it say their names?
I didn't get
so
that
we can
far.
give a quick shout out.
Let me see. Look at the other names.
Found it.
What are their names?
Victor Glover, Christina Hammett, coach, Reed Wiseman, and Canadian Jeremy Hansen.
Mm-hmm. And it was said that this is the first time that a foreign member would be attending this shuttle or whatever, space capsule.
Mhm.
It's exciting. I find it pretty exciting because this stuff kind of exploring.
This doesn't happen very often.
No, and I wish it did.
Mars.
I wish it did happen more often. That we focus more on exploring other planets and stuff like that. Maybe actually going to Mars. But this is like we haven't been to the moon in like 50 years, just like they said, and
ever since like the space race.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that topic has kind of been kind of like old and forgotten. There's not much interest in it, and maybe this will inspire more investigations into or more exploration.
More
beyond our
people
planet.
wanting to do it.
Yeah, maybe more funding, maybe something like that. Yeah.
I am going to steal the moon.
Okay,
that's why they're doing it. To steal the moon.
Yeah, pretty much.
Just gonna pluck it out of the.
We doing tech news or what?
No.
Yes.
Tech news is not cool anymore.
Shut up.
I'm just kidding. Tech news is cool.
Okay. The Italian Data Protection Authority is temporarily banning not TikTok. ChatGPT over concerns the chatbot is illegally collecting user data. The organization is expected to launch an investigation on ChatGPT and whether or not the chatbot has violated the European Union's General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, despite developer OpenAI assuring the public the chatbot is, in fact, GDPR compliant. The organization also notes another reason for said ban is because while the chatbot's technically for users over the age of 13, there's no way of actually verifying the user's age. So that only contributed to the ban, which they said it's temporary, but there's no word on if they're bringing it back anytime soon. So that's the first headline. My second and final headline, slow news day. Twitter changed its official logo from the bird to the Dogecoin logo. And the value of Dogecoin apparently jumped about 30% just today. What do you guys think?
Everybody put your money into Dogecoin.
Yeah. What do you think, Matt?
Yes.
Put all of it.
Put all of my money in my checking account into Dogecoin and see how it goes. It'd be funny as soon as I did it just plummeted.
That's what happened when I put money into FTX. I'm not doing any more Bitcoin.
You actually put money into FTX? That's sad.
No.
I was gonna say, there's no way that you put money. I feel bad for anybody who did, but
hey, that's
kind of should have saw it coming.
This is why I have 200 in my bank account. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I'm kidding. Yeah. So that's tech news.
Today, on the day of recording this, the San Diego State Aztecs and the Yukon Huskies will be playing for the men's NCAA basketball championship, as March Madness is finally coming to a close in April. Now, the women's championship happened the day yesterday of recording this, where the LSU women's basketball team, led by what's her name, Angel Reese, I think, beat the Iowa Hawkeyes by over 10 points in a not so close game. And Caitlin Clark sadly fell in that game against LSU. It was a 17-point game where Angel Reese, the sophomore for LSU, put up 15 points. And more on sports news. Today, the deal was made official, and the company Endeavor, which also owns the UFC, has bought out the World Wrestling Entertainment, also known as WWE, as there could be possible collaborations there, coming off of the biggest weekend in WWE each year, WrestleMania weekend. That's sports news. Thank you for watching another Wacky Cole video. Please like, comment, and subscribe.
Good
I'm
day.
not even gonna. Good day.